Welcome to the classic Storytime for kids. I'm thrilled to share today's story, The Tale of Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. Let's dive into the charming world of Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Lucy. She loved to play in the fields and explore the countryside. One day, she wandered a bit too far and found herself lost. Lucy looked around and noticed a little cottage nestled among the trees. Curious, she tiptoed closer to see who lived there. As she reached the door, she heard a soft humming sound. It was a sweet, gentle tune. Who could it be, Lucy wondered. With a little courage, Lucy knocked on the door. To her surprise, it opened, and out came a little hedgehog wearing a tiny apron. It was Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle. Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle was not just any hedgehog. She was a wonderful washerwoman. She washed and ironed all the animals' clothes in the countryside. Lucy was delighted. "Hello, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle," she exclaimed. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle smiled warmly. "Oh, I am very busy, my dear. I have lots of laundry to do. Would you like to help me?" Lucy nodded excitedly. Together, they gathered all the little clothes that were scattered about the cottage. There were tiny shirts, little trousers, and even a pair of fluffy socks. Lucy couldn't believe how many clothes Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle had to wash. As they worked, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle told Lucy stories about all the animals she washed for. "I wash for rabbits, squirrels, and even a few birds," she said with a twinkle in her eye. Lucy laughed and asked, "Do you wash their clothes every day?" Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle nodded. "Oh yes, sometimes they get very muddy and need a good scrub." After they finished washing, it was time to hang the clothes out to dry. Lucy helped Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle peg them onto a line in the warm sunshine. As they worked, they sang songs and shared giggles. Lucy felt so happy to be helping her new friend. Suddenly, they heard a rustling noise. It was the animals coming to collect their freshly washed clothes. First came Peter Rabbit, looking very dapper in his clean little jacket. "Thank you, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle," he said, tipping his hat. Then came Squirrel Nutkin, who was all smiles as he picked up his tidy trousers. "You do such a wonderful job," he chirped. Lucy watched in amazement as each animal thanked Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle for her hard work. She felt proud to have helped her friend. After all the animals had left with their clean clothes, Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle turned to Lucy. "Thank you for your help, dear. You are a wonderful little helper." Lucy beamed with joy. "I had so much fun. Can I come back and help you again?" Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle smiled. "Of course, you are always welcome here, Lucy." As the sun began to set, Lucy knew it was time to head home. She waved goodbye to Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle and promised to visit again soon. And from that day on, Lucy and Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle became the best of friends, sharing many more adventures in the lovely countryside. The end. Wasn't that a delightful story? Mrs. Tiggy-Winkle is such a wonderful friend to have.